kiss before you leave me, and my imagination will feed my hungry heart. Leave me and before we part. This is the devil I dream on. When I'm alone.
Dreamt in the mushroom cloud shadow of Cold War hysteria, a post-apocalyptic setting took hold, forecasting the days and decades after the bomb dropped, where radiation ran rampant, survivors were scavengers at best, and cannibals at worst. There have been several early interactive stabs at the Doomsday scenario, including Infocom's all-text classic time traveler, Trinity. The consoles provided Crystallis, which ended up feeling particularly medieval, while Capcom's forgotten Trojan and Taxon's 8 Eyes settings were hard to discern from the game itself. If you wanted the scoop, you had to check their manuals. Enter 1986. The Berlin Wall still stood, you could rent Red Dawn for your VCR, and the Cold War was still lukewarm, a perfect time to test the waters with a more in-depth electronic outing. The game was an RPG called Wasteland, developed by Interplay over 2 years for a 1988 release, published by Electronic Arts for the PC, Apple II, and Commodore 64. Wasteland lived up to its name, dropping players in the desolate American Southwest and in control of a party of desert rangers in the 21st century after a nuclear catastrophe between the US and the Soviet Union. Wasteland's interface borrowed heavily from Interplay's wildly popular Bard's Tale and cemented a hit, pushing players out of the familiar fantasy zone of RPGs and into the uncanny realm of a destroyed United States. And while the graphics eked out representations in glorious 16 colors, colorful combat phrases like "Thug explodes like a blood sausage" tickled players pink. A follow-up came later in 1990 with Fountain of Dreams, taking place in Florida. It wasn't developed by Interplay and failed to gather an audience. But another event happened in 1990 that was much more interesting. A small pen-and-paper game company in Austin, Texas called Steve Jackson Games was raided by the Secret Service, tipped off over one of their games called GURPS Cyberpunk. While the details of the case are fascinating, the world of cyberpunks has little to do with Fallout, though that odd word GURPS was the initial incubator. GURPS stands for Generic Universal Role-Playing System, which, as its name implies, set out to make a standard for any role-playing scenario from dragons and cyberpunks to bunnies and burrows. This was in contrast to Dungeons & Dragons company TSR, which had a separate system for each of its universes. Steve Jackson Games was also a harbinger of internet communication, running their own dial-up bulletin board system and giving their fans constant updates years before people blogged. Steve Jackson himself made reference to Interplay's intentions for a post-apocalyptic computer game using the GURPS system as early as 1994, with the game finally debuting to the press as Fallout, a GURPS post-nuclear adventure. Fallout was to tell the story of Vault 13, an underground bunker made to house citizens when the imminent A-bombs fell. You took the role of one of the Vault's denizens in a quest to save it. Its life-giving water purification chip had failed, leaving the subterranean survivors a scant 150 days of H2O. The Vault doors opened on November 21st, 1997, and Fallout emerged. Players discovered that war never changes, but Fallout had. GURPS was dropped after the licensing deal went sour earlier that year over questions of approval rights. The team, some returning nearly a decade later from Wasteland, quickly adapted a new system to be compatible with the past year's work called Special, named after the player's character attributes: strength, perception, endurance, charisma, intelligence, agility, and last but surprisingly not least, luck. Unlike other games, every attribute was important and used for a myriad of checks. Strength let you hold big weapons, intelligence and charisma influenced conversations, and luck was a two-way street, preventing weapons from blowing up in your hands or letting you in on some very random encounters. The other cores of the system were skills, traits, and perks. Skills let you handle weapons, pick locks, barter, and gamble, while traits let you personify your vault dweller with a little yin-yang. Each trait had a positive and negative side effect. Well, except for Bloody Mess, which assured that anytime anyone perished, they would meet their maker in the goriest possible way. Perks were awarded upon leveling and allowed further customization through benefits. The game played out in real time, with a switch over to turn-based grid combat when attacking or provoked. Through action points, you could move about taking carefully targeted shots, or even pickpocket or use machines in the midst of combat. Armed with stats, skills, and a noble struggle, your customized jumpsuit-wearing hero left the safety of the vault to brave what remained of the West Coast. With vague directions on the handy Pip-Boy, a PDA equipped with a screensaver, the Vault Dwellers started the search for the neighboring Vault 15. The overworld gave way to a literal map, where the stalwart adventurer could traverse by clicking into the void, or to a known location, while engaging in a spare random encounter, be it combat or an otherworldly event. In all, there were 12 postcard-perfect locations to visit, from the derelict Vault 15 to towns like Shady Sands, Junktown, and The Hub, which was the closest thing to a metropolis considering the circumstances. Each town was populated with survivors, gang members, and even a memorable mutant named Harold.
I got mutated. Sure wasn't born this ugly.
Certain key characters featured professional voice acting and were fully animated.
I suspect you are a spy sent by the followers.
As the Vault Dweller became pulled more into the inner workings, choices had to be made both morally and tactically. Joining the bad guys for a spell could net significant gains, while a charismatic silver-tongued talker could gab their way out of almost any situation.
No problem.
The water chip was finally located underneath the necropolis, home to the ghouls, radiation-resistant humans who resembled the living dead. Then the second main quest of the game reared its ugly, mutated head.
Or to say, not ghoul, not be here.
There were super mutants roaming the countryside with tremendous weapons and strength, looking for untainted humans to experiment on. Upon returning the water chip, the Vault Overseer showed concern and sent the Vault Dweller to stop the menace. From there, Fallout split into two main objectives, destroying the mutant military base and stopping the Children of the Cathedral, a religious cult, based in the ruins of Los Angeles. You journeyed to Ground Zero with a Geiger counter, matched wits with mutants, and befriended the Brotherhood of Steel, an organization bent on preserving technology and science while keeping the land safe and trying not to dip their powered armored toes into politics. There was an inevitable showdown with the being behind the super mutants. Called the Master, the sprawling fleshy mass spoke with three voices and planned to use the FEV virus to turn the remains of humanity into monsters and reboot the world.
We won't change. Not unless we are of one people. One.
And here's where the endgame got interesting. Assuming you joined the Brotherhood of Steel and your talking skills were up to par, you didn't have to fight the Master. Presenting it with a report stating that mutants were sterile and some other convincing arguments, the Master went into a suicidal spiral, taking his own life by self-destructing. Fallout was an instant classic. With the Cold War over, nuclear proliferation was now Pakistan and India's problem, allowing the team to mix in a nostalgic, kitschy twist, best represented by the duck and cover appeal of the Pip-Boy caricature and the opening tune, Maybe, by the 40s group The Ink Spots. Likewise, the Vault Dweller didn't have to go it alone. He could recruit some helpers, including Tycho, a Nevada Desert Ranger, and the unforgettable Dogmeat, a four-legged friend with a heart of gold and a tendency to walk into the line of fire. This would lead to many a reload since, in Fallout, death was final. Dogmeat wasn't the only suicidal partygoer. Group AI was one of Fallout's biggest weaknesses. With little control over your comrades in combat and even out, where using the steal command on your own buddies was often the quickest way to manage their equipment. There was also a lot of moaning over the game's 150-day time limit, which was later remedied with a patch. These problems would be addressed in something much larger than a patch. A full sequel was less than a year away in Fallout 2.
Come in, Chosen One.
While the engine remained predominantly the same, there was no time limit, the AI was improved, inventory management was tacked on, and there was a quest to obtain a nuclear-powered car that was great for skipping random encounters. With the engine locked down, the team had more time to design a much larger world. The story picked up in the reaches of the Northwest. Players changed roles to the descendant of the first Fallout, who was banished from his own vault after being deemed too dangerous to stay after contact with the outside world. The village he founded, Arroyo, was in dire straits, with disease and famine ravishing its people. Once again, you donned the sacred 13 jumpsuit and quested, but not for a water chip, but a GECK, a Garden of Eden creation kit. The amount of locations nearly doubled, though the talking heads were almost halved. Good old Harold seemed to have aged well over the last 80 years, even growing a tree named Bob on his head.
His name's Herbert. I talk to him when I get lonely. Just kidding. His name's Bob.
In the quest for the Gek, the adventure went from towns like those in Fallout 1 to even more abandoned vaults, the dystopian Vault City, and the somewhat fascist North California Republic. The NCR's Madam President, Tandy, was an elderly woman, but one who had been rescued from kidnappers in Fallout 80 years prior by the original Vault Dweller.
Lord, that was a long time ago. Hardly remember who I was then.
Just like last time, there was more than just the Gek. Early on, you were introduced to the mysterious Enclave, who could easily be mistaken for the Brotherhood. The Enclave were the remnants of the US government, complete with president and a saucy secretary. They had aspirations similar to the Master, to use the FEV to create a new human race, and they kidnapped your people for their sick plan.
A strange mist stole their minds and sent them to the land of sleep.
The Steel Paladins were also back, having set up satellite hubs throughout the region. After taking out the President and the Enclave on their oil rig and rescuing your people, there was a final showdown with Frank Horrigan, a Secret Service agent.
You've gotten a lot farther than you should have. But then you haven't met Frank Horrigan either.
Frank Horrigan was one of Fallout 2's complaints, with many players feeling he was arbitrarily placed and didn't compare to the Master. 2 was also considered ridiculously hard, with the starting tutorial temple becoming a place you saved after every rad scorpion kill, in hopes of making it out to the full game where the difficulty persisted. The game was darker than the first, with themes like slavery, drug addiction, and even Scientology, as well as a strong sense of despotism throughout all of the various regimes.
Trader named Vic's supposed to be here. He be saying he know about slavers.
The conversation with the President was also very revealing, as he divulged that even the Vaults were part of the Enclave's plan, as a sort of social experiment.
We had a number of sanctuaries that would enable the glorious American civilization to endure.
Vault 13 was intended to be sealed for an extended period of time to preserve a perfect strain of humanity for the FEV. Except the extra shipment of water chips was rerouted to another vault due to a bureaucratic mishap forcing the doors open. The Fallout franchise has weathered 2 spin-offs. The first was 2001's purely tactical take, Fallout Tactics: Brotherhood of Steel, a non-canon story of a splinter group of the Brotherhood taking back Middle America starting in Chicago. This Brotherhood pushed their political agendas, unlike their West Coast brethren, led by the drill sergeant from Full Metal Jacket. Literally.
Dismissed!
Tactics was developed by 14 Degrees East and published by Microforte, and stripped out most of the role-playing aspects. You recruited and led a small platoon through various scenarios that were reminiscent of the previous games, but with extended variations of turn-based combat and new abilities like going prone. The game also shipped with the only analog version of Fallout titled Warfare, a miniatures tabletop game. While Tactics didn't receive the acclaim of the previous games, it was still held in high regards, unlike the series' lone console entry, which was fortunately at least not a kart racer. The other Brotherhood of Steel, which surfaced on the PlayStation 2 and Xbox, presented 3 playable characters at the outset, along with 3 additional Wanderers to unlock. Cyrus, Nadia, and the ghoul Kane searched for their fellow Hood members in, and mostly below, the city of Carbon. The console Fallout had sprawling maps full of gruesome action, but fans noticed the content had been significantly slowed down. Purists even screamed about Brotherhood of Steel's blatant in-game advertising, transforming familiar nuke cola cans into promotional devices for Ball's Guarana. Interplay and Black Isle briefly toyed with a Fallout 3, which survived as a tech demo codenamed Van Buren. It featured a few locations, a swinging camera, a scantily clad female protagonist, and numerous bugs, and was shelved, but not before the fans could tear through it for more non-canon morsels to extend the universe. Interplay is now a ghoul itself, barely existing, but still maintaining the rights to develop a Fallout MMO, having sold single-player Fallout rights to Bethesda, creators of the Elder Scrolls series. As for Wasteland, Brian Fargo, the man behind the Desert Rangers and Fallout, has acquired the rights, but his updated Bard's Tale didn't fare very well, and his company's latest endeavors have been porting Line Rider to the DS and iPhone. Thankfully, if Fallout is the way the world ends, it would have happened already. The franchise's trip back to the future has offered up equal commentary on our optimistic past and potential nuclear downfall. The Wasteland is a scary place, and while the likelihood of humans mutating and cultists rioting is fairly slim, losing our planet to an airborne apocalypse is not so far-fetched. Fallout 3 will continue the series' 14-year pilgrimage for sustenance and survivors. Whether the end of Fallout lies on the open road or in an abandoned vault remains to be seen. Our advice? Wear plenty of sunscreen.